I'm Hannah, and I am celebrating 10 years of living with a chronic blood cancer.
If this was a book about Hannah in general, not about cancer, what would that back cover page say about this book?
Oh, it would say probably on her third life in the 57 years that she's been alive. A few years ago, actually, when COVID happened, my husband and I started an at-home bakery, something I've wanted to do my whole life. And now I'm doing it. We also never had children and biologically, and we are currently in the process of adopting two teen boys from foster care, and they are amazing.
And so, so this is 10 years. That's incredible, Hannah. I want to ask more about, we're winding back to that time. I know a lot of us like to try and push it out a little bit. It usually isn't that pleasant to think about, but what was it 10 years ago that alerted you to something's not right here?
Yeah, well, I didn't have any symptoms that I noticed. I dealt with fatigue off and on, and I just thought that was just part of who I am because I don't really remember a time I didn't deal with that, honestly. I had seen my GP. And she instructed or informed me that I had a high white blood cell count. My response was, well, I don't remember a time where a doctor hasn't said that to me. And they always followed it up with, look, it's nothing. You probably have a little infection getting started, or maybe you're nervous about being here. I never had that white coat syndrome. I was never nervous about going to the doctor, but they always chalked it up to a combination of those things. Then my husband and I had placement of six kiddos from foster care, one big family, and he was out of town for training for his new job. And my GP said, "Look, I've told you you have high white blood cell count. I'm setting up an appointment for you with an oncologist." So I went to the oncologist, had a bone marrow biopsy, and she said, "Yes, you have chronic lymphocytic leukemia." And I said, "I can't, don't have time. My husband's out of town. I've got six highly traumatized kids. Can't do that. What else could it be?" So she said to me, "Listen, you have two options. You can do treatment or just wait and see what happens. If we do treatment, it might come back in a year or it might literally never come back. Or you could just watch, hang and see what's going to happen." Again, I just responded with, "I can't. I've got six kids. I can't, but I'll think about it. Treatment or no treatment." In my opinion, let's be aggressive. I've never heard of, she never explained watch and wait to me, or anything about those options. It was just, do you want to be aggressive and treat it, or do you just want to wait and see what happens? Well, I want to be aggressive and treat it. I don't even understand the question. Let's do it. Any disease is scary, but there's something about that C word, right, that terrifies us all. So just my initial response, aside from I don't have time for that, was just, all right, let's do this. Let's do this thing. Let's get it over with. Let's put it behind us. The lesson I learned from seeing that first hematologist was very important. First of all, it should have been a red flag from the beginning that she didn't explain my options to me. She just said, "Here's your two options." Had she explained those to me, I never would have chosen to get FCR, which is a chemotherapy that I don't really even use for CLL anymore, not in the US anyway, definitely not as a first line treatment. And as we have learned about CLL, it learns in just very basic terms, which is the only thing I understand, is that it learns the treatment and grows stronger from it and eventually comes back. And you can't use that same treatment anymore because the cancer itself has already figured it out and figured its way around it. So, watch and wait is actually an excellent thing. I know it doesn't sound like that, but if I'd understood my choices from the beginning, I would not have started. And I'm now on my third line of treatment. So, also, when So I did the FCR. I did 4 treatments of it. After the first month, uh, the nurses looked at my blood work and said, it doesn't even look like you've ever had cancer. This is fantastic. So I asked the hematologist, should I continue or should I stop now? And she said, we're going to do all 4. Just go. Better to be safe than sorry. We're going to do all 4. Okay. I should have, I wish I'd known to dive deeper, ask more questions about what she meant by that. Then about a year and a half later, my at a follow-up, she came into the exam room and said, well, my dear, it's time for us to do treatment on you. And I said, again? Just treatment again? Will it be the same treatment? And she said, wait a minute, have we done treatment on you in the past? I'm going to need my doctor to know what she's already done with me. Okay, so she said it's going to be Imbruvica. That's what we're going to do. And it's just a pill. And you'll come here to my office and pick it up every month. And I said, oh, okay, well, why are we choosing that one? And she said, well, how am I supposed to know? I just know it's the next line of treatment. And I said, okay. And she said, there are too many things out there for me to know everything. I just know it's the next line of treatment. I said, all right. And so I work full time. So how am I going to figure out coming to a cancer center that has the same hours as I work to figure out picking it up every month? Isn't there any way it could be shipped to my home? And she said, no, Imbruvica doesn't do that. They'll only ship it here. So I got a second opinion. And first of all, the doctor, I went into Louisville. I went to University of Louisville because I always liked the idea of a teaching hospital. And that doctor spent almost 2 hours with me on our initial visit. Yeah. He did say, yes, Imbruvica is fantastic, and it is my recommendation too, but you're not ready for it. You don't need it right now. I don't see any reason for you to start Imbruvica now. So we waited a whole other year before I started on Imbruvica, which I ended up being on for 6 years. It was fantastic. But yeah, get a second opinion. Ask your doctor questions. Ask your doctor questions. Ask your doctor questions. If you don't know what questions to ask, find a support group. I was very lucky in the support groups I found on Facebook, frankly. I tried a few different support groups. Some of them didn't fit me, and you'll find the same thing. Keep looking until you find the people who speak your language. I found the people who spoke my language, and you can do that, and they will help you with what questions do you need to ask, because that's very, very important.
And Hannah, I'm so thankful you shared your experience. I think people can learn from that and at least know asking questions is not only okay, it's the right thing to do. It's a good thing to do. Sometimes it's hard, but what are some of those top questions at that first appointment? If someone's hearing you have CLL or SLL, what are some of those top questions that would help them determine if this is the right doctor for me?
Well, first of all, regarding the treatment on that very first visit where she gave me those options, I would have, I would have asked more questions. I wish I would have asked what I was thinking, which was, why on earth would someone not jump right into treatment? I wish I would have asked her that. What are the pros and cons of either choice? Because that was a really important question to ask, and I didn't ask it. Another really important question that I asked the doctor and her response was an enormous red flag that I completely ignored. It's important to have a good relationship with your doctor, and you don't want to do anything, to disrupt that. But I asked her, at the advice of my CLL support group, I brought up the topic of my also seeing a CLL specialist. She reacted negatively. She said, well, if what you're wanting is a second opinion, Dr. So-and-so, is my partner, will get that second opinion for you. And I said, well, it's not really, it could be a second opinion, I guess, but I think ongoing, I would like to have my local oncologist and a CLL specialist work in concert. Would that be okay? And she did not react favorably. And she sort of invited me to go find another doctor if I wasn't happy with this, but that she was a local expert. Um, okay, so I let that, I stayed with that when I let that be her response without really realizing that that should have been my decision right there to leave and find just another doctor altogether, not just a second opinion. And that oncologist is no longer practicing. I don't know why. I don't know the story about it, but it's kind of comforting to me. You know what that tells me, Stephanie, or what I'm letting it tell me, is that my instincts in hindsight about her were accurate. And that's important. Listen to your instincts. Really important.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm so glad you're saying that because sometimes it is hard to listen to that inner voice and not question it over and over again. One question would be to dive into what is this waiting situation? Why can we even wait? What are the mechanisms of this specific disease? And what are the pros and cons of making a decision either way? And then another one is to just ask about if you're going to someone in the community who maybe doesn't only see blood cancers or only sees maybe something like CLL once in a while, to just ask, hey, do you have a recommendation for a CLL specialist? I'd like to work together.
Yes, yes, absolutely. It's crucial. And, for a few years, the first couple of years in that support group, boy, all I just kept saying was everybody posting about see a specialist, see a specialist. And I wish I hadn't taken so long to let that drill into my head. But now I have a local oncologist right across the river in Louisville who's amazing and a fantastic specialist who's about an hour and a half away in Cincinnati, Dr. John Bird. He is outstanding. And Dr. Bird and my local Dr. Stevens work so well together.
So one more thing, Hannah, from you, just on the importance. Why is it important to not just have a CLL specialist, but also find someone locally in the community who you have a great relationship with?
Right. So you're going to be getting regular blood work. And you want someone who's if you want to only have a specialist, I think that's doable, but you may have to travel to them. But if you have someone local who has mutual respect with whatever specialist you choose, that's really crucial. In fact, I recently changed my treatment. And I was admitted to the hospital for 1 week while that treatment happened, and just for precautions. And I did go to Cincinnati, where my specialist is, but he even said to me, if you would prefer to do this locally, I have all the faith in Dr. Stevens and his team at Norton that they can handle this well. So, I mean, that's crucial in your treatment, is having that type of trust in your providers. One other thing about seeing a specialist that this is really important. I want to make sure everybody gets this message. I see one of the top 10 specialists in the US, well, therefore in the world. And I did that on purpose. And because I deserve to see one of the top 10 specialists in the world. And so do you. So do you. Whatever your diagnosis is, find the person who knows the most about it. Find the person who's at the forefront of treating it and of new treatments, because you deserve that. If you can travel look, we are not made of money. Believe you me, my husband and I. We're both hard workers, but I've been so lucky that this guy is only an hour and a half away. If you can find someone, if you have a car, can you get there? If I needed to fly to someone, I think I would try to figure that out. But even if you have to travel to someone, it's worth it. It is 100% worth it. People who are the top 10 are the top 10 for a reason. And who else would you want leading up your medical care? Whatever your diagnosis, you are worth it. You deserve the best that's out there. But yeah, look for the best. There's no reason not to. Don't let anything stop you.
When your new doctor had said, okay, let's wait, you're not ready for it, do you remember what it was that got him to say, okay, now we do need to switch you onto ibrutinib or Imbruvica.
Right, right. My white blood cell count just kept climbing and climbing and climbing. And my fatigue became, well, it just had a big impact on me. There was a point where my office was sort of in a far corner of the universe of my office building. And when I would have to go to the ladies' room, I was so tired. I would get up and walk outside my office door to go to the ladies' room. And I would already, that was maybe 20 steps, and I would already have to sit down. So I would rest for a moment, then I would get up and I would purposely take a long way because it's a back hallway where people didn't usually go because I had to lean on the wall the whole time because I was that fatigued. The symptoms that you're experiencing are meaningful. They might be temporary. It might be one of those things that comes and goes and to be expected, or it might be a sign of disease advancement. So it's important to be vocal and have a good line of communication with your provider. So, well, for one thing, that is when I went to the new doctor and a different doctor, and he was enthusiastic about Imbruvica. But when it came time, uh, first of all, I want to say my insurance rejected it. It's horrifically expensive. It's something like $16,000 a month. Who do you even know who can afford that? So I had to call it off, and and the hospital said, no, 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 no. That's just our first attempt. We have other ways. So they reached out to the makers of Imbruvica, and I was on a plan called Imbruvica by Your Side, where I paid a $10 copayment monthly for Imbruvica for 6 years. He explained to me some of the side effects that I may or may not have. Um, at the beginning, I had some really bad side effects, and I remember seeing a lot of different people on the Facebook support groups who's people who said, "Well, I did try the Imbruvica as long as I could, but the side effects were so painful, I had to quit because I knew from what I was hearing through the research through the hospital that Imbruvica was doing amazing things." And so I told myself right then and there, whatever side effects I have, I'm going to tolerate. I just am. And I'm going to get through, and I'm not going to quit because of how hard the side effects are. I'm not going to quit. I have to give myself every chance here. So, sure enough, I had the terribly swollen and painful joints. It was really rough. I also had pretty severe fatigue, and you often have fatigue from CLL anyway. So that was a real double whammy. I had the first few weeks on it, maybe 2 or 3 months, were pretty rough. I would sit at work with my hand on the mouse with a heating pad on top of that. And half the time there were just tears in my eyes because it really hurt. But all along, I was telling myself I know that the side effects are temporary, as with many medications. The side effects are temporary. That's going to go away. And also, it's a reminder to me that Imbruvica is at work on my cancer. That pain, it was a double-edged sword because it was rough, it was pain, but it was also my reminder that good things were going on inside of me. And those terribly swollen knuckles, I got them all the time. And I figured out how to literally work my knuckles to where it wasn't so painful. Probably the first year and a half, maybe even 2 years, the side effects were still there. After that, they just faded. And I had the occasional bouts of side effects. But staying hydrated, I mean, that is one of the best things you can do for yourself, whether you're in treatment or not in treatment. It does a lot.
Then at some point after 6 years, something was shifting again. Can you describe what was happening with your body and the conversations that you had with both of your doctors that led to another treatment decision having to be
I
made?
can. I had read that the common amount of time on Imbruvica is around 5 years, and they don't really expect you to go longer than that. At about 4 years, my numbers started not responding quite as well as they had in the past. And both of, my local oncologist and my specialist had said to me, we know that Imbruvica is eventually going to fail you, and it's begun. That has begun. It's still doing very well. But we need to just start talking about what changes we'll make in the future. So, and it was exactly as they said. And it's interesting because they said, well, Imbruvica is beginning to fail you. What I found out when I went to Dr. Bird for the first time, the specialist in Cincinnati, the nurse practitioner was looking at my blood results, which you get immediately now, right? And she said, "Now, had you already been told you have 17p deletion?" And I said, "What? No, well, do I?" And she looked and she said, "You do. Yeah, you do." Now that was hard. That was hard for me to hear because, I know through these 10 years of support groups, I know people with 17p deletion who have died. I didn't have it in the beginning. I picked it up along the way. Now, who's to say when that happened? Um, you know, we don't know. We don't know when that happened. But I had a fish test in the beginning, and I did not have 17p deletion at the time. Yeah. So, I guess my CLL is aggressive, but, so is science. That was a really scary moment for me. And Dr. Berg came in the room and I was stunned and my husband was stunned. And he said, "I'm just being I care. And I want you to know I'm sorry. But before you say another word, just so you don't think I'm saying this because you want me to, 17p deletion is not as scary as it used to be. So many treatments that we have now make that a non-issue or less, much, much less of an issue. And there's going to be more and more and more in the future. So don't don't let the 17p deletion make you feel like this is a death sentence because it is absolutely not. That is false. Get that out of your head.
Describe sort of the conversations you had with your doctors. What were they? Were they presenting different options? What do you feel were the most important parts of those conversations that other people could learn from?
I wanted to go something a little more proven. So we discussed Venetoclax, and again, there was another trial at the time where my specialist said, we'll do Venetoclax for sure, but there's a very interesting trial in China that I think is gonna, I think it's gonna be a game changer for everyone with CLL. But he said to me, Venetoclax is what we've been talking about all along. I think it's tailor made for you. In fact, when I was in the hospital getting my rapid ramp up of Venetoclax, he came in my room and he said, "You are responding immediately to Venetoclax." And he said, "This is actually quite remarkable." I don't even remember what my white blood cell count was when I went in the hospital. I think it was in the 50,000s, which we know it really shouldn't be over 10,000 or something's wrong. The third day in the hospital, it was 5,000. My white blood cell count was 5,000. Now, anyone else who's had to deal with, you can imagine how amazing that feels. And now it's 4. I went the other day for a checkup and it's 4,000. So yeah, it's impressive and it's kind of amazing. But he said, Dr. Bird said to me, you know, let's look at maybe 8, 9 months at the most on this, and then let's look at a good 2 or 3 full remission. What do you think? And I said, well, I think yes, let's do it. So that just shows again that Dr. Bird and my specialist is trustworthy, as trustworthy as a doctor can be. I have faith in him, and it proved to be a good decision. Referencing the side effects that I dealt with Imbruvica that I knew would be temporary. I'm having a little bit with Venetoclax, and in the beginning, I stayed on Imbruvica, and the idea was that I would be on Imbruvica for maybe a month or two or three or four at the most, and then, taper off of that. Well, I had such strong gastric issues between Venetoclax and having both Venetoclax and Imbruvica, and I was concerned because it was severe. So I'd gone to him for a follow-up, and he said, Hannah, once again, you're responding so well to Venetoclax. I think you're having this severe issue because you're on both. So let's go ahead and say goodbye to Imbruvica. And he was right. Within a couple of days, I was completely healed from that. So, and that was a huge concern of mine because I couldn't leave the house. So, and then I do have some strong fatigue that I deal with, but it's already lightening up. It's already like lightning. So, my dizziness, I think, is almost gone, which is amazing. That's something I've had to deal with the vertigo for years with on Imbruvica. I didn't know if it was CLL or Imbruvica, frankly, but that's almost gone, and that's been pretty amazing for me. So I just remind myself that whatever I might be feeling that could be a side effect or a symptom is likely temporary, but I still talk to my doctor about it every time. They all said, "What? Talk to us. What's happening?" And I said what I just told you. I can't focus. I'm feeling like I can't function in my life the way I need to function. And they all responded to me with, you are not realizing what your body is going through right now. Your body is doing big, big things, probably bigger than it has ever done before. And so I gave myself that. I gave myself that. So that was a comfort to hear all of them say that. The nurses, the doctors, everyone, they were so supportive. But I had to realize that my body was, I don't want to say taking a hit, but that sure is how it felt. And it was the way they put it is best. My body was doing big, big things. They said this is an oncology med, not a new, headache medicine. You forget that because you've taken Imbruvica for 6 years as though you're taking an Advil. You don't think about it. You take it. It works. Fantastic. But you just have forgotten this is huge and you're okay. This is quite expected for what you're going through. So that was comforting to me, but that's what I dealt with. And I have the lingering fatigue. It's getting better every single day. I know that this is CLL and it's chronic. So I'm not confused about the fact that I might get a 2 or 3 year remission out of this. I don't confuse that with a cure. I think I started thinking of my life differently when I was first diagnosed 10 years ago. And that was sort of at work in me when I wasn't even recognizing it. But I did start doing things a little differently. And, the thought that Imbruvica is going to be the thought that Venetoclax is going to be a limited duration for me, I like that. Let my body have a break for a while. I'm on a lot of other meds too for high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, etc. So let my body have a break, let my liver have a break from processing those oncology meds for 2 or 3 years. That will be fantastic.
What is that message in terms of what you've learned? It's been 10 years, Hannah. It's incredible.
Find the best, find the specialist, and just remember that you deserve that. Why don't you? Why don't you deserve? There's no good reason. Whoever you are, I don't care what your life is. I don't care what your disease is. I don't care. I don't care if you're sitting in a prison cell right now. You deserve to be alive and healthy. You deserve to have the person who knows the most about your disease advise you and treat you if possible. And if you are running into roadblocks with your insurance, ask that specialist. All right, well, you can't be my usual doctor. My insurance isn't going to pay for it. What can you leave me with? What do you want me to know? What's the what are the most important things you want me to leave here knowing, even though I'm not going to be coming back? Go out there and get what you can get. Information, education, knowledge. Go get it. Go get every piece of knowledge that's not nailed down. Get it and bring it home with you.